A millionaire's wife bullied staff until an amazing new waitress revealed a surprising truth. In the small town of Maplewood, the local diner hummed with laughter, the scent of coffee mixing with the sweet notes of baked goods. But for Sarah, a 35-year-old waitress, it was a battleground. Each day began with dread as she faced Victoria, the millionaire's wife whose presence filled the room with an icy disdain that silenced any light. "How on earth did you think a child could thrive on a waitress's salary?" Victoria hissed, her sharp voice slicing through the morning chatter. Sarah's heart dropped. Every word felt like a weight on her chest, making it harder to breathe, harder to focus. She was fighting to provide for her spirited 8-year-old daughter, Lily. The last thing Sarah needed was to feel belittled in the very place that sustained them. As the days dragged on, the diner faced a worrying decline in customers. The economic strain sparked an unyielding desperation within Sarah. Did her long hours mean nothing? Did her dreams for a better life for Lily vanish with the dwindling tips? How could she bear this unbearable weight while subjected to Victoria's ridicule? Enter Mia, the new waitress bursting with energy like a fresh spring breeze, each smile a ray of hope. Mia immersed herself in the environment, quickly winning the hearts of the regulars. But for Sarah, Mia represented everything she feared. What if she outshines me? The thought nagged at Sarah. But as they scrubbed down the counter after busy lunch shifts, sharing their lives over soapy suds, something in Sarah began to shift. She revealed her passion for painting, the colors of Maplewood splashing vibrancy on her canvas, a light for Lily's future. Yet, even as Sarah dared to dream, Victoria's venomous remarks intensified, wielding her wealth like a weapon against the staff. Their fragile world was at risk, and Sarah felt hemmed in, her tickets to safety dwindling. One particularly tense afternoon, the diner swelled with tourists craving local flavor, when Victoria swanned in with her usual air of superiority. The room fell silent, all eyes drawn to her presence. "How quaint," she laughed derisively after observing Sarah. "You think you have any hope of a better life, don't you? Pathetic." The biting words echoed in Sarah's mind, scraping at her self-worth. Desperation rising within her chest like bile. As her colleagues exchanged worried glances, for the first time she realized what she was facing wasn't just the ridicule of a privileged woman. It was a moral quagmire that threatened to drown her spirit. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes it... Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Fueled by a fierce surge of anger, Sarah felt the urgency manifesting in her veins, a fire igniting her once quiet resolve. How she fought back against this woman's oppression could shape her path forward. Mia's enthusiasm remained steady by her side, offering a lifeline amidst the encroaching shadows. Together, they began exploring the town's history, determined to uncover the truth behind Victoria's wealth and the ties to Sarah's own lineage. What would happen when Sarah discovered the shocking truth about her family's past? How far would Victoria go to suppress the secrets that bound them? With every moment passing, tensions mounted, and the fragile foundation of their diner threatened to crack beneath the weight of hidden histories and newfound alliances, leaving the residents wondering about the true cost of silence and the audacity of forgotten dreams. Every shift in the diner felt like a war zone, but the small spark ignited by Mia offered Sarah newfound clarity amidst the chaos. As they dusted the old shelves at the diner, she couldn't shake the thought that she still had something worth fighting for. In the quiet moments, after the din of chatter had faded and just before the doors swung open to welcome the morning crowd, Sarah began sketching ideas for a series of paintings that captured the essence of Maplewood. These moments of focus were necessary. Her days were filled with the sting of Victoria's words, each taunt reverberating painfully in her mind. Yet at her core, Sarah contained an ember of defiance that had yet to fully ignite. She began to weave her passion for art into her daily routine, sometimes pulling Mia into her daydreams about a future where she could share her talent with the world beyond the diner. "Maybe one day I could host a gallery up at the old town hall," Sarah shared, her voice laced with both hope and skepticism. "I could display all my paintings. It could be a way to show everyone that we all have value." Mia nodded enthusiastically. "You have to believe it, Sarah. You have an incredible gift. It's not just about being a waitress. You're an artist. People need to see that side of you." With newfound determination, Sarah decided to take weekends to paint, even if it meant sacrificing sleep. Every brushstroke felt like a step away from her old life, a rejection of Victoria's disdain. But beneath that excitement, uncertainty loomed. Could she truly break free from the confines of her current circumstances? The thought of putting her work out into the world scared her. What if no one cared? What if Victoria's laughter haunted her dreams? The diner, once merely a source of income, transformed into a place of duality. It was now the backdrop for her survival, as well as the arena for her resolve to push against her limitations. However, every day that passed without addressing Victoria felt like a warning siren in her mind. What if Victoria discovered her plans? What if she used her influence to crush Sarah's blossoming confidence before it could fully develop? Then came a Friday that changed everything. Just as the lunch crowd dwindled and the last plates were cleared away, Victoria arrived, flanked by friends, her laughter ringing out like sirens signaling an incoming storm. Sarah was serving their table when she overheard them discussing an upcoming gala hosted by Victoria. The event was not only a display of wealth, but also a showcase for a local charity that had historically downtrodden the town's most overlooked sectors. Suddenly, a dangerous idea intruded into Sarah's mind. What if she could get her work featured at this gala? It was risky, possibly naive, but in that moment it felt like a tangible way to confront Victoria, an avenue for Sarah to reclaim her voice and dignity. The gears began to turn hastily in her mind. She reached out to Mia, energy crackling between them like static before a storm. "I have to do this," Sarah proclaimed, determination fueling her every syllable. "I don't know how, but I need to get my paintings into that gala." Mia cheered her on, but the weight of the upcoming confrontation with Victoria loomed over Sarah like a dark cloud. What would happen when they crossed paths again? Would she be dismissed once more, or could she finally unveil the strength that resided within her? As Sarah continued to paint, obscured fears twisted within her, blending with a sense of urgency. This journey was more than just about art. It was about reclaiming her identity and dignity. In the half-light of the diner's kitchen, the stakes rose. Her next brushstroke might just be the one to shift the balance once and for all. The time had come to face Victoria, not just as the bullied waitress, but as an empowered artist with a voice and a purpose. Would she find the courage to put her heart on display in a room filled with her oppressor's laughter? The upcoming gala loomed closer, threatening to unveil secrets that could change everything. Each brushstroke on the canvas was a confrontation, a battle waged against her own fears and insecurities. Sarah stood before her easel, a collection of half-finished paintings sprawled around her. The images she had captured were more than just landscapes or still lives. They were fragments of her soul, echoing the colors of Maplewood and the turbulence within her. With every layer of paint, she felt the tendrils of doubt constricting around her heart loosen just a little more. Yet the shadow of Victoria's laughter echoed incessantly in her mind, a reminder that the war was far from over. Mia's unwavering support became Sarah's lifeline. They often spent late nights in the diner after closing, the chatter replaced with the soft rustle of a brush against canvas as Mia helped prepare Sarah's portfolio. "This needs to shine," Mia insisted, her hands covered in paint as she pointed out imperfections. "If you want to make an impact at the gala, Every detail counts. "Do you really think they'll care?" Sarah asked, her voice faltering as she held up a nearly completed piece, a bright, hopeful sunset over Maplewood. "Of course! You're not just some waitress. You're telling stories through your art. That's powerful." The passion in Mia's voice lit a fire within Sarah, but a chill of doubt remained. As the day of the gala approached, Sarah increased her efforts, pouring more time into each painting while also grappling with insomnia. The urge to sleep was sacrificed at the altar of her artistic ambitions, and soon fatigue draped over her like a heavy fog. But with every tired blink, she reminded herself of the impending confrontation with Victoria. Then came the night of the gala. Adrenaline coursed through Sarah's veins as she stood before a mirror in her modest apartment, donning a simple but elegant dress that felt foreign against her skin. She was terrified and exhilarated. This was not just a gallery, a platform, an arena where she would stand as an artist, not merely as a waitress caught in the whims of her employer's daughter. Arriving at the venue, the lavishness of it all struck her. Golden chandeliers hung overhead, glinting over the wealth that echoed in laughter and clinking glasses. The din of conversations was overwhelming, but Sarah took a steadying breath, anchored by the knowledge that she was here for more than just art. She was here to solidify her identity. Mia squeezed her hand, grounding Sarah amidst the chaos. "Remember, this is your moment." Yet, amidst the beauty, Sarah spotted Victoria across the room, her presence like a storm cloud looming over the event, drawing attention and admiration. She stood surrounded by friends, her superiority radiating, and Sarah felt small in comparison. But somewhere behind that ravenous self-confidence, Sarah sensed fragility. With each painting Sarah showed, she noted the reactions of the attendees. Curiosity, admiration, sometimes even surprise. It fueled her resolve. She was not invisible. She was part of a conversation, challenging the very fabric of what her world defined her as. However, as the night wore on, and as applause surrounded her like a protective barrier, an unexpected surge of dread rippled through Sarah. Victoria approached, wearing a smile that felt like a predatory mask, and her heart raced. "Look at you, Sarah," Victoria drawled, her tone dripping with condescension. "An artist now? How quaint." The laughter within the crowd seemed to freeze as Sarah stood at a precipice, a moment that could either silence her or propel her forward. "You'll see," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she anticipated. "This is just the beginning." The words hung heavy in the air, laden with promise and challenge. For the first time, she felt the power of her voice rippling through her. This was a turning point. Would she find the strength to confront and redefine herself? And could it inspire others in her life? The night had only begun, and Sarah felt the weight of her potential surging inside her, threatening to unleash something beyond her wildest dreams. With every passing moment, the question lingered. Could this be the night where she transformed from obscurity into recognition, from victim to victor? The clamor of the gala faded into a distant hum as Sarah faced Victoria, the weight of expectation heavy on her shoulders. The spotlight felt both exhilarating and suffocating, a paradox that fed the fire in her chest. She could not back down now. The stakes were too high. She had often felt powerless in the presence of wealthy and intimidating figures, and Victoria epitomized that world of privilege. Yet, as Sarah stood there, she discovered fortitude within her, a resolve forged from countless hours of painting, sleepless nights, and support from Mia. Victoria's smirk shifted to a subtle frown when Sarah didn't cower. This slight falter in her demeanor sent sparks of courage racing through Sarah. Though her heart thudded erratically, she felt a flicker of empowerment. Perhaps the metamorphosis into an artist truly could give her voice the strength it had never possessed before. "What do you know about art?" Victoria questioned, her tone dripping with scorn. "You've been serving tables, not creating them." The crowd pulsed around them, observers emboldened by the tension as they leaned into the exchange, awaiting a spectacle. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Sarah's moment of reckoning was no longer about paintings or accolades. It was personal. "Actually, I know that art isn't defined by who you are or what you do for a living. It's about expressing yourself, finding clarity in chaos," Sarah shot back, the words leaving her lips effortlessly as if they were always buried deep inside, ready to emerge. Victoria's facade of superiority faltered as surprise flickered across her features, giving Sarah a shred of satisfaction. Perhaps this is what true artistry demanded of her, not just brushstrokes on silk, but the courage to paint her truth against a backdrop of disdain. As the night stretched on, Sarah's determination grew. Each painting she showcased seeming to vibrate with electric resonance, the struggles of her past morphing into a powerful narrative. Conversations sparked around her, people drawn in by her passion and perception. She learned to embrace the probing critiques, treating them like a fresh canvas, open to interpretation. But with each whispered compliment, a tension lingered in her heart. What about Victoria? There was something almost contagious about her antagonism. It ignited a question in Sarah's mind. Was her rivalry with Victoria merely a fight for recognition, or was there something deeper at play? Could their paths reflect the shadows and light of contrasting lives? By the end of the night, Sarah stood before her final piece, a tumultuous rendering of a storm-tossed sea, colors swirling in a chaotic dance. It echoed her internal struggle, yet also whispered hints of hope nested. Within discord, a small crowd gathered, voices bright with praise, but Sarah's gaze remained fixed on Victoria, who now watched from a distance, her expression inscrutable. "Let's see how far you can swim, artist," Victoria finally said, her voice barely rising above the growing applause. The challenge was unmistakable, a gauntlet thrown. The comment lingered in the air like a stubborn mist, wrapping around Sarah's limbs with both comfort and trepidation. In this moment, she felt a pulse of clarity. It dawned on her that confronting not just Victoria, but all her fears was imperative for her growth as an artist and as a person. As she turned to face her admirers, exhilaration coursed through her. This was her moment of transformation, a bridge between the obscurity of her past and the vibrant potential of her future. Yet, even amidst the applause, she sensed the looming question. How would she grapple with the challenges that lay ahead? The night held promises, hidden revelations, and perhaps a reckoning, yet with Victoria, was unavoidable. The road to becoming the artist she aspired to be now ran deeper, beckoning her toward the unknown. What would it take to prove her worth beyond mere recognition, to emerge as a force in her own right? The answers remained elusive, as did the shadows cast by the new paths she might forge. But one thing became clear: she was ready to discover. The applause faded slowly, but the thrumming energy within Sarah surged, shaking off the remnants of the night's uncertainty. The gallery lights washed over her, illuminating the determined set of her jaw. She could feel eyes lingering on her. Admiration mixed with curiosity surrounded her like the strokes of her artwork, dynamic, layered, unpredictable. But amid the exhilaration was a nagging pull, a tension woven through her triumph. Victoria's challenge echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the battle she hadn't yet fought. To swim or to sink. The thought churned like the tempestuous seas in her painting, her mind racing with possibilities, strategies, and doubts. Each choice ahead felt like a brushstroke on her canvas, a step toward defining her identity as an artist. Stepping away from the crowd, Sarah sought solace and quietude. It was there she found her sanctuary, a small alcove where the gallery's heartbeat quieted. She pressed her palms against the cool surface of a nearby wall, grounding herself. Each breath steadied her resolve. This was not just about proving herself to Victoria, but about transcending the reflection of doubt she'd carried for far too long. Those years of serving tables had taught her more than she once realized. They had built resilience she could now wield like a weapon. As she paced back and forth, fragments of conversations flickered through her memory. Encouragement from Mia, criticisms that stung, and hope ignited by the recognition she almost dared to grasp. Pressed between her professional ambition and the remnants of her past, Sarah faced a revelation. She had to stop viewing herself through anyone else's lens, especially Victoria's. That competitive energy could either bury her or set her ablaze. But she yearned to elevate her art beyond the struggle. Inspiration surged, and as she envisioned colors on a fresh canvas, she understood what she was meant to do. Beyond the conflict lay a deeper truth. Art wasn't just a personal haven, it was a conversation. She decided then and there that her next piece needed to reflect the duality of vulnerability and fortitude. It would show her emerging from the depths, not as a point of contention between her and Victoria, but as an affirmation of her journey. The storm-tossed seas would remain, but she would introduce a solitary lighthouse, its beam cutting through the chaos, representing guidance and hope. Excitement bubbled beneath Sarah's surface, but lurking shadows whispered of Victoria's influence. Unlike the past, where she would have cowered beneath the weight of scrutiny, this time she would confront it head-on. Strong enough not just to weather the judgment, but equipped with a renewed sense of competitive spirit, a transformation would soon be painted in hues not of fear, but of fearless conviction. Just as she plotted her next steps, footsteps echoed in her direction, the familiar cadence of her friend Mia, rejoining her refuge. "Hey, you okay?" Mia's voice pulled Sarah back to reality, and as Sarah nodded, she felt the sparks of determination crackling anew within her. "Yes, I'm ready for more," she declared, a fierce light igniting her gaze. In the moments they shared, Sarah quietly revealed her vision for the next piece, and Mia listened closely, admiration sparkling in her eyes. "It sounds like a masterpiece in the making," Mia affirmed, lifting Sarah's spirit further. Yet, along with encouragement, came a critical insight. "But are you prepared for the backlash, especially from Victoria? It's not just competition, it's personal to her." The truth of Mia's words settled, and Sarah realized that the confrontation would not be delayed. With each heartbeat echoing her retreat from fear, Sarah knew she would have to face Victoria, not at a gala, but in the hustle of the gallery scene. The stakes were set to rise, and she could feel the tension wrapping around her like a weighting coil. Sarah's heart raced with anticipation. The time had come to transform her vulnerability into strength, to wield her art as a voice, mighty enough to challenge not just Victoria, but the very confines of her own fears. What would this first confrontation look like, and would she have the courage to stand her ground when the tide turned? Determined, she prepared to plunge into the depths of what awaited her. Sarah emerged from the alcove, her heart thrumming with a rhythm forged from both excitement and fear. The hustle and bustle of the gallery reopened around her, vibrant and alive, but the colors felt more vivid now, pulsing with her newfound sense of purpose. She focused on her upcoming piece, a projection of her. Inner chaos made manifest, but what lingered in the back of her mind was the confrontation with Victoria. The realization settled in her gut like a stone. If she wanted to assert herself, she had to approach this with intention and strength. No more avoidance, no more second-guessing. Drawing in a deep breath, she located a nearby easel with an empty canvas, waiting patiently for her inspiration. It was time to translate her emotions into a visual language. She could see the swirling storm clouds, feel the gusts of wind on her cheek. Each stroke would need to emanate the turmoil she was preparing to confront head-on. As she painted, the studio began to fill with familiar faces, some of whom were fellow artists, others simply patrons of the gallery seeking inspiration. Each interaction became a tiny battle in itself, a test of her resolve. When someone complimented her previous work, Sarah felt the unshakable urge to prove that this next piece would outshine anything she had done before. Her brush glided over the canvas, capturing the essence of her duality. Each fleck and layer represented her vulnerabilities, and as she layered the paint, she transformed it into a spectrum of strength. The lighthouse began to take shape, rising amidst the turbulent waves. It was a powerful symbol, not just of guidance, but of resilience against the storms of judgment and rivalry. But battling the external was nothing compared to what raged within her. Questions bubbled to the surface. What if Victoria dismissed her latest effort? What if her friends' warnings about the backlash were prescient? As fear crept into her thoughts, Sarah clenched her jaw, recalling Mia's words about confronting fear rather than cowering to it. With each stroke, she visualized her opponent, not as an adversary, but a catalyst for her growth. She couldn't allow herself to drown. She would rise above the competition. Days turned into nights as Sarah lost herself in her work, the world outside her studio fading away. She poured everything into her painting, each session becoming a meditation on strength and vulnerability. But amid the solitude, a flicker of doubt festered. The weight of anticipation for the impending confrontation with Victoria pressed on her shoulders like an anchor. Finally, the day arrived when she needed to deliver the piece, a figurative beacon of her growth. The gallery buzzed with energy as artists prepared their work for display, but Sarah's focus narrowed, culminating in a singular purpose. She was drawn to the anticipation of sharing not just her art, but her identity. As she stood before the canvas, an overwhelming sense of purpose coursed through her veins. This was not just her art, it was her declaration of independence from self-doubt. The lighthouse gleamed in the light, a testament to her journey. She understood now that confronting Victoria was not about besting her. It was about embracing her own evolution, moving beyond the need for approval, creating art that resonated with her truth. But as Sarah prepared to showcase her masterpiece, she saw the silhouette of Victoria approaching, sharp and defined against the gallery lights. A lead weight settled in her stomach. Would this be the moment of reckoning she had prepared for, or would it unravel her confidence once more? With her heart pounding, Sarah took a deep breath, knowing the intersection of fear and determination would define this moment. The time had come to face the very shadows that had plagued her, to test whether the transformation she fought so desperately for was indeed real. And with every step Victoria took toward her, the question loomed. Would Sarah's lighthouse shine bright enough to illuminate the darkness? The moment Victoria stepped into view, Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline pulse through her veins. The surrounding buzz faded into muffled whispers as her world narrowed to the figure approaching her, an embodiment of everything she had been grappling with: the fear, the competition, the self-doubt. With every step Victoria took, Sarah's resolve was tested. "Nice piece you've got there," Victoria remarked, her voice steady yet edged with an undercurrent that made Sarah's skin prickle. Her compliment hung in the air, laden with an implicit challenge. Sarah fought the instinct to shrink under the scrutiny, steeling herself instead. "Thanks, I put a lot of work into it," Sarah replied, her tone firm, surprising even herself with the conviction behind her words. This was the moment to assert her value, to stand tall against the weight of expectations. Victoria examined the painting critically, tilting her head slightly, as if trying to extract the deeper meanings hidden in the brushstrokes. Sarah could feel the intensity of her gaze, dissecting not just her artwork, but also her very essence. It sent a shiver down her spine, but this time she didn't retreat into herself. Instead, she pondered all the emotional effort embedded in the pigments. "What does this mean for you?" Victoria's inquiry pierced the tension, forcing Sarah to confront her own narrative directly. "This lighthouse represents resilience, finding light in chaos. It's about navigating through storms rather than avoiding them, Sarah explained, her voice growing stronger as she leaned into her articulation. "And do you think this confers strength on you?" Victoria probed, a subtle smirk dancing on her lips. It was a valid question, one that forced Sarah to acknowledge her fears, but also to validate her journey. Rather than answering, Sarah searched Victoria's expression for a hint of weakness or vulnerability, hoping for a glimpse of the woman behind the carefully curated exterior. It struck her then. This confrontation was not merely an evaluation of her skills, but a test to unravel the tightly knit expectations she had woven around herself. In facing this moment, she could unearth deeper truths about her craft, about herself. "I'm learning that strength comes from within, not from outside validation," Sarah stated, surprising herself with the clarity of her insight. The truth felt liberating, like unearthing a long-buried treasure she had only recently begun to understand. She watched as Victoria momentarily faltered, the smirk vanishing as if the sun had briefly obscured a cloud passing by. Empowered by the reveal of her own perspective, she took a step closer, closing the physical and emotional distance between them. "What about you, Victoria? Does your art come from a place of vulnerability, or is it rooted in competition?" The question lingered in the air like a charged electric field. It was Sarah's audacious push, weighing down the conversation toward an unexpected territory of empathy. A flicker of surprise crossed Victoria's face, quickly masked by her practiced demeanor, yet Sarah noted it. Then, suddenly, aware of the tension surrounding them, she continued, "I don't want to see you as an enemy. I want to understand what makes you tick and see how we can coexist in this space as artists." With every syllable spoken, Sarah felt the light embrace of liberation. She was reaching past mere survival. She was carving out a form of dialogue that could redefine their relationship. The potential weight of her words was a gamble, yet there was an undeniable strength in putting herself out there. Victoria narrowed her eyes, calculating her response. Sarah braced for a defensive remark, her heart pounding with the weight of her vulnerability. Then it happened. Victoria smirked again, but this time it was different, tinged with respect. "Well, it seems you've grown more than I anticipated. Perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye." The moment was electric. Had she begun to chip away at the barriers that divided them? Or was this the calm before another storm? As the gallery buzzed around her, Sarah felt a bittersweet mix of anticipation and uncertainty. This encounter marked a pivotal shift in her growth, a confrontation that not only tested her mettle, but also opened a pathway to unexpected camaraderie. But in the back of her mind lingered the unresolved tension. Would Victoria embrace coexistence, or would she dig her heels in, intensifying the competition? The question hung heavy, and Sarah understood that this was merely the beginning. With resolve growing stronger within her, she contemplated her next steps. The stakes had been raised, and the battlefield was more complex than she had anticipated. As Victoria walked away with a newfound glimmer in her eyes, a realization washed over her. The tide was turning, and she was ready to navigate its currents, wherever they might lead. But just as she turned back toward her canvas, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in a nearby mirror, the truth crashing down like waves on the shore. Was she truly ready for the fight that lay ahead? Ready to let go of her doubts for good? The gallery lights flickered gently above Sarah, casting a warm glow that felt almost surreal. She turned her focus from Victoria's departing figure back to her painting, the vibrant colors swirling in front of her, symbolic of her newly blossoming resolve. The earlier confrontation had unleashed something dormant within her, an unyielding spirit that begged to be nurtured. But it also ignited a fire of uncertainty, one that warned her that every step forward would require a deeper understanding of herself. Drawing in a steadying breath, Sarah stepped closer to her canvas. The lighthouse she had painted became a mirror reflecting her internal landscape, the light within serving as her constant reminder of resilience. Could she truly believe in her worth as an artist? Was her newfound strength enough to face the looming competition and potential conflict with Victoria? As she mixed her paints, the brash sounds of chatter from fellow artists filled her ears. Their voices melded into a chorus of self-assurances, cringe-worthy doubts, and backhanded compliments. Just beyond the immediate clamor, she felt a different kind of tension. The weight of expectation, her drive to succeed juxtaposed against her fear of failure. She craved acknowledgement, but what if it came at a cost? Suddenly, an idea sparked, an initiative she could pioneer that would push her boundaries and redefine her own expectations. What if she hosted a small showcase of her work that invited collaboration rather than competition? An event where she and fellow artists could not only present their pieces, but also share narratives of their creative processes and struggles, humanize themselves in the eyes of the competition. Her pulse quickened, enthusiasm pulsating along with her heartbeats. Yet the plan brought forth another question. Could vulnerability breed authenticity without putting her directly in the line of fire? How would her peers, especially Victoria, respond to such a proposition? As the notion grew in her mind, she returned her attention to her painting. She imagined how she could weave the stories of others with her own. The tension between vulnerability and strength that coursed through this artistic journey was, in essence, what she aimed to convey, an exploration of shared experiences that could foster deeper connections. "Could I host a workshop instead of merely displaying my art?" Sarah murmured aloud, feeling the idea solidify like layers of dried paint. It would require divine courage, an act of stepping into the light rather than hiding behind her canvas. But it could also be a powerful catalyst for personal growth and understanding. But the fear cradled within her tightened its grip. Would she have the authority to lead such a conversation? Would she risk exposing her fears and doubts to those she sought to impress? What if the showcase revealed her insecurities instead of her artistry? The internal battle raged quietly within her as she wrestled with self-doubt. Yet amidst the uncertainty, she recognized the possibility of potential transformation. Suddenly, she remembered the smirk on Victoria's face, the flicker of respect. Maybe it's a risk worth taking, she thought, steeling herself. Placing one hand on the edge of her easel, she closed her eyes momentarily, envisioning herself presenting her plan, not as an adversary, but as an equal, inviting others into her sphere rather than trying to wrestle them out. As Sarah opened her eyes again, she vowed to follow through with the idea. The fear of rejection would be a part of the process, but she could use it as fuel for her growth. It was time to advance from mere survival to thriving within this competitive realm. But as she began sketching out her plans in her mind, a shadow fell over her workspace. She turned slowly, her breath catching as she saw the confident stride of Victoria approaching. The calmness Sarah felt moments before raced to a halt, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like an impending storm. This time, the encounter could mean more than a dialogue. It could result in the answers she sought regarding your future dynamic. Would Victoria challenge her again, or would she become an unexpected ally in Sarah's budding endeavor? "Sarah," Victoria's voice cut through the tension, drawn closer into the fold of their complicated narrative. "We need to talk." Sarah's heart thudded loudly in her chest, the air growing thick with the weight of expectation. She focused on that steady pulse, using it as an anchor. This conversation with Victoria could shape so much of her artistic journey. With a cautious nod, she gestured for Victoria to continue. "I've been thinking about what happened earlier," Victoria began, her tone surprisingly calm. "You really stood your ground. It's not easy to confront someone like me, and I respect that." Respect? The word hung in the air, mingling with Sarah's surprise. She had prepared for hostility, not a moment of acknowledgement. This unexpected pivot forced her to reassess Victoria's role in her life, not merely as a rival, but possibly as a teacher, even an ally. "I've noticed your work has changed lately," Victoria continued, her eyes flicking to the unfinished painting on the easel. "There's a spark in it. It feels alive." That spark, a mix of fear and resilience, had fueled Sarah's recent artistic endeavors. Could it ever be enough for art to simply exist beyond expectations? That thought meandered through her mind as she processed Victoria's compliments. "Thank you," Sarah replied, her voice steadying. "It means a lot coming from you." She cultivated the urge to explain her new visions. Perhaps this was the gateway she needed. But before she could voice her thoughts, Victoria's posture shifted, as if bracing for impact. "I was thinking," Victoria started slowly, "we rely too much on rivalry in this community. What if we organized something together instead?" The proposition crashed upon Sarah like a wave. A collaboration? The very thought sent vines of excitement twining through her. Yet skepticism lingered, threatening to pull her back into doubt. Did Victoria truly want partnership, or was it merely an avenue to undermine her? "Are you serious?" The surprise in her voice betrayed her. "You and me?" "Yes," Victoria said, the corners of her mouth lifting ever so slightly. "I'm tumultuous, but maybe you and I balance each other out. You could lead workshops on narrative through art, and I could set up the logistics. We could bring in others to share their stories, a space for creative vulnerability." The idea unfurled before Sarah, coloring her imagination with possibilities. But her mind wrestled with the core issue. Did stepping forward into this collaboration risk compromising the very essence of her newfound voice? What would it mean to partner with someone who once symbolized her doubts? "Look, I know this may feel like an unfair proposition," Victoria continued, her gaze piercing but sincere. "But I believe in willpower outweighing competition, especially in a field like ours. I want to put perception aside and explore the stories that bind us as artists." This was a crossroads. Sarah scrutinized the palette of her emotions. Desire for understanding, battling wariness of betrayal. Was this the pivot point she needed to cement her own identity while embracing the unknown? "I can't promise I won't have doubts," Sarah replied carefully. "I need to be sure I'm not losing my voice by merging it with yours." Victoria nodded, the acceptance clear in her expression. "Fair enough. I can't say I'm always easy to work with. But maybe, together, we can navigate this unpredictably." The silence that ensued was charged. Sarah sensed this wasn't just a suggestion for collaboration, but a chance to redefine how she viewed competition and partnership. She imagined the workshop, a space where stories mingled and vulnerabilities thrived, a counter-narrative to the cutthroat environment she had grown accustomed to. "Let's explore this," Sarah finally said, a flicker of determination igniting within. "But we need ground rules. Vulnerability only thrives in a safe space." "Agreed," Victoria replied, an edge of relief weaving through her certainty. "I'm all for accountability and honesty." As both women began brainstorming ideas, Sarah felt a profound shift. For the first time, they weren't enemies confined to separate corners. They were two artists poised to share their truths, potentially weaving a narrative richer than either could create alone. Yet just as hope began to settle like paint upon a canvas, a voice interrupted their reverie, an offhand comment from a nearby artist that dripped with condescension. Worried glances exchanged. Both Sarah and Victoria could hear the doubts that lingered like shadows. Could this partnership withstand the scrutiny that came with their personal insecurities? As laughter threatened to drown out their conversation, Sarah knew this would be only the beginning of a journey fraught with challenges, each needing to confront what being vulnerable truly meant. They had moved beyond rivalry, but at what cost? More importantly, would their combined efforts coalesce into a transformative experience, or would they falter under the weight of others' expectations? "Let's put our ideas to the test," Sarah proposed, her voice edging with renewed resolve. "If they can't see the value, then we'll create our own space where art speaks." Victoria nodded, her own eyes glinting with fiery ambition. In that moment of decision, the line was drawn. The path ahead blurred with tension, but Sarah felt an exhilarating rush of purpose mingling with apprehension. She realized, whatever challenge awaited them, they would have to face it together. Yet, as they set to work, the whisper of doubt still loomed over Sarah. Would her voice remain strong through such uncharted territory? They were embarking on a project of vulnerability, a double-edged sword that could either carve out genuine expression or expose their deepest fears. And as doubts surfaced anew, Sarah couldn't shake the question that echoed within her. What will happen when we finally reveal our vulnerabilities? The whirlwind of the collaborative project unspooled with an energy Sarah had never anticipated. Days turned into nights as she and Victoria poured themselves into planning. Workshops filled with creativity, sessions devoted to vulnerability, and discussions merging narratives through art. Each time they met, the tension between them transformed into something productive, something empowering. Sarah felt a newfound excitement. The sense of purpose invigorated her. She was no longer just a waitress or a victim of Victoria's ridicule. She was now an artist, leading a movement that could redefine not only her life, but perhaps the artistic community in Maplewood. They named the initiative Art in the Open, a platform for artists to share their stories, creating a space where vulnerability was celebrated and connection thrived. Each workshop attracted a diverse crowd, and the energy was electric. Artists who had once kept to the shadows emerged, sharing their tales of struggle and triumph. They painted not just landscapes or abstracts, but raw emotions splashed across canvas. Sarah led by example, recounting her journey, her battles against self-doubt, and how art had become her beacon of hope. As she spoke, she witnessed attendees nodding, resonance sparking in their eyes. In these workshops, she saw her own transformation reflected back at her. Every participant left with not just a painting, but a deeper understanding of their own narratives. They affirmed that their experiences mattered. The shift was powerful. Doubt gave way to inspiration, and insecurity morphed into confidence. Sarah celebrated this growth, watching as the community of creatives embraced the exhibition of vulnerability. As the project progressed, something changed in Sarah, too. The apprehension she had felt around Victoria slowly dissipated, replaced with genuine camaraderie. They worked seamlessly, complementing each other's strengths. Sarah's artistic vision melded beautifully with Victoria's logistical prowess, creating an event that shimmered with authenticity and purpose. But amidst this blossoming partnership, shadows of doubt lingered like specters. How would critics react? What if the community remained indifferent despite their hard work? Each time doubts pricked at her, she leaned into the support of those who surrounded her, Mia, her fellow artists, and even Victoria, who had become not only a partner but a friend. The day of the showcase dawned brightly, the air buzzing with anticipation. Colorful banners adorned the walls of the town hall, echoing the joy and stories of the artists participating. The space was filled with vibrant paintings, each a tribute to resilience. Sarah's heart raced with excitement, not only for her work, but for everyone who was brave enough to unveil their truth. As attendees floated in, mingling and admiring the art, Sarah stood at the entrance, a vivid painting of a lighthouse radiating hope behind her. It was the embodiment of her journey, reflecting her growth from a place of fear into one of empowerment. Victoria approached her, a broad smile painted across her face. "You did it, Sarah! Look at this!" The duo shared a moment of recognition, warriors on a battlefield transformed into allies fighting for a common cause. Together, they had woven a narrative stronger than either could have imagined. Then, amidst cheers and laughter, a familiar voice sliced through the crowd, the scoffing, cutting tone of Victoria's circle of friends. Sarah's heart sank, recognizing the same caustic remarks that had haunted her in the diner. "Look at what these artists think they can do," one remarked. "Hobbyists parading around like they belong." The words hung in the air, a heavy weight attempting to tangle up the hard-fought joy that had blossomed in the showcase. But rather than retreating into a shell of self-doubt, Sarah stepped forward, channeling the courage she had nurtured throughout this journey. "Art is for everyone," she declared, her voice gaining strength with each syllable. The crowd hushed, drawn in by her conviction. "It's a medium to express who we are and where we come from. It transcends barriers. We deserve to share our stories, don't we?" The room vibrated with energy, burgeoning applause erupting from fellow artists and participants. "Yes," they shouted, rallying behind her words. Victoria stood beside Sarah, nodding affirmatively. The collective affirmation reshaped the atmosphere, transforming a moment of potential derailment into an act of solidarity. And at that moment, just as she had envisioned, a lighthouse illuminated their hearts. Not as a solitary figure in a stormy sea, but as a beacon of hope shining together in unison against the shadow of doubt. Sarah felt an amalgamation of pride, joy, and recognition envelop her. She had grown to become a leader, not just as an artist, but as a vessel of empowerment. And in that shared space, vulnerabilities had been laid bare, anxieties transformed into courage, and competitive spirits melded into collaboration, the highest form of artistry. As the showcase continued, she caught sight of her painting, glowing vibrantly in the light, capturing not only her journey, but also the journeys of others. They had fought battles, emerged scarred yet resilient, and this moment was a culmination of all their struggles. And with every cheer, every compliment slung her way, Sarah stood tall, her heart bursting with newfound purpose. She had achieved a transformation deeper than visibility. She had conquered the tide of fear, elevating herself from the confines of judgment to emerge a visionary. This would be the future she would fight for, not only for herself, but for every artist who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. Sarah realized she was not just an artist, nor merely a waitress. She was now a voice. And this was merely the beginning. As the night drew to a close, surrounded by laughter and camaraderie, she understood overwhelmingly she had arrived. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.